Hello, so this is kind of like my final vlog. It's a synthesis vlog. I'm currently in Brussels, uh, Brussels, Belgium, and I leave tomorrow for the airport. So this vlog is kind of like summing up my trip and really talking about what I learned from my inquiry and my hour alone posts. For my hour alones, I went to the Van Gogh Museum and I kind of got to see kind of how people interacted non-verbally and you know, not only did I get to see people from the Netherlands, but other tourists just like me, and how we kind of all made it through the Van Gogh Museum. For my second one, I talked to a girl named Megan, and we talked about her studying abroad here and being from Brazil, I believe, and kind of what it meant to be studying abroad and doing what she was doing here. Um, And then for my last one, I talked about my train ride with a girl who had lived in the Netherlands all of her life, and we kind of talked about um, country pride, and she kind of helped me realize that, even though I'm not happy with the way things are going, it's important to remember to look at and find something I value in my country, because without value, I wouldn't want it to change and wouldn't want it to be for the better. Um, And then for my inquiry posts, I first talked about the unequal representation of women going into higher education, kind of in the top tier, kind of in that tier that's going to become doctors and researchers and mathematicians and people like that. And it kind of showed me that, just because it's a different place and there's testings in place and there's a different system, it doesn't mean that gender inequality is going to get any better, or um, that it can be a problem and it can be rigged. And it kind of stemmed from a talk that we listened to, or from a talk we had with a member of the Council of Diversity in Amsterdam, or a previous member, and he talked about how, as much as they want to claim that they're diverse and wonderful, it doesn't always happen that way, and there are problems with that, and kind of related back to how, the United States is at times, and most of the time, and it doesn't always mean that it's perfect. And I kind of learned that that was like a similarity that I think the Netherlands and the United States and Michigan State and other institutions of education have in common. My next one, I actually talked about the project I did with 6 other students for the Fontis and Belgium students. And from that, it was just an amazing experience to have. I was one of 7 people in charge of constructing a simulation, and for a lot of peers of mine, um, actually most of them older than me, and how crazy it was to just kind of go through that, and learning about how frustrating that can actually be, and watching other people from different cultures kind of learn about an inequality that nobody really speaks about in the United States a lot, or when they do, it's not dealt with. And it was really interesting for me to kind of like hear about that, because their college system, it's easier to get into, so they have less of that kind of problem. And it was really cool to kind of be able to put on that experiment and to use what I've learned from other parts to do that. And then the last one was kind of working in college and the amount of hours a student is expected or allowed to work. And I looked into this because I was talking with this girl who hadn't even gone to university yet. She was still in, she was a junior, or she was an 11th year in secondary school, and she was getting ready to take her big test that would, like, give her the score that she could use to head to a university. And she talked about how, she didn't really want to work in college, and she was going to stay at home, and which is very different from how we are. And so I was interested in kind of comparing the two, and I some of this is like, and most of it's connected to the cost of college, but I looked into the hours that like people work, and I talked with some Fontes students, so some other teacher education students, and compared it to my own personal life. And then also I looked into the amount of hours a university like allows an international student to work compared to what Michigan State would allow an international student to work. And I found that like in the Netherlands, probably mostly because school costs so much less, but they tend to work less, and their academic career is college is a continuation rather than them starting a new chapter in life, which is very different. I feel like college is a celebration in the United States, and we're expected to kind of grow up a little and become an adult in that moment, which here, that's not always the case. You still get to live at home. You still have, if you choose to, you still have mom and dad kind of backing you and supporting you, even if you do end up paying for your college. You have a bed to sleep in, and you have a home, whereas in the university you're expected to live in a dorm, or you're expected to live close to campus, and it doesn't mean you're by your parents, and you're expected to live on your own, and it's just a very different responsibility. And so it was something I chose to look into. I think some of the expectations that I didn't realize I had, but I did, was that, and especially with how our political and social environment is now, with the amount of hostility people are kind of protruding, and like who's in office, I expected the EU to be, or these countries to be perfect, and where everyone wanted to be, and just to be 10 times better than the United States. And that slowly chipped away as my trip went on. And as even if these countries are better and have a better educational system and live in a more like better environment for most people, it doesn't mean that it's better, and it doesn't mean that it's anything more than what the United States, like, they have problems just like us, and those problems can be problematic, and it's just, you can't sit there, and the grass is always greener on the other side until you get there and realize that there are some brown patches. Just maybe the spotlight's not on them, but that's really not their fault. That's our fault for not paying attention. I think the similarities I had was that I got to have wonderful conversations when I did my hour alones, and that's not something you can take away. I mean, I got to talk to people I will never be able to talk to again, and they're intelligent, and they're so great, and I'm really happy I had those conversations, even for my inquiry blogs too, because and this even leads into my recommendation for students' hours alone next year, is just start talking. If you start talking, people will want to talk to you as well. They'll talk back to you, and it'll be a fantastic conversation because you're with someone new, you're with someone you don't know, and you're both learning from each other the entire time. And even if it goes horribly wrong or in the completely different direction, or it's still a chance for you to grow, and you grew, and that experience will change you, that conversation will change you. And I think it even leads into the challenges. This trip has not gone smoothly for me. I'm not going to sit here and say that it did. There were definitely some large hiccups and some not so great things that will be remembered on this trip. But what it's good to focus on is those conversations, and those conversations you have with students. And I don't care if they're 5 or 19, those students are still people you can learn from, and you'd be amazed. And I think in the future, I will think differently about the students that are in my classroom, and about kind of where they came from and what they're doing. Everyone has a story, and you can't diminish that. And even if it means letting a 5-year-old play with blocks because you know that their life has been very hard, and you just need to treat them like they're safe here and that they can be 5 years old and they can play with blocks. That's still something you have to remember. And this, I'm still learning about how this trip has changed me and how I've grown as a person through this trip. And so we'll see what else it brings up. But with anything, I think I had some bumps, but what I'm so happy to take away from this is the experiences I've had at the schools and the experiences I've had with the people on this trip, and most of all, like, the conversations that I've had with the people on this trip that were not from the United States or not from this trip even. But those conversations will be with me for the rest of my life, and I am so thankful for them. And that's pretty much it. So, thanks for listening.